What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream. We had ourselves a day today, whether it was Draftkings or for prize picks, ended up cashing out on both sides, and of course, had a ball on the golf course. A lot of fun, followed a few of my favorite groups. Jordan Spieth had a lot of airtime for me in person, but also the Scotty Scheffler group, JT group, just when you only have about 500 people at a tour event and you have all these top players, it's something that I'm going to take advantage of. Just first class, first row seats to a lot of the interaction, and got to meet a lot of the ambassadors too. They're pretty much walking the golf course. One of them owns a distillery around here and ended up giving me a thing of bourbon for free. So told me to come by his distillery and guys, this is a like moonshine quality bourbon. It doesn't taste like there's any alcohol in it, and it's 100 proof. So we're going to have ourselves a fun live stream here. But outside of that, welcome in. Hopefully everybody is having a fine Friday evening. We're going to get you prepared for everything you need to know from the DraftKings and Prize Picks perspective for tomorrow. We'll talk through weather report. We're going to go through my top DraftKings picks as we typically do. And then at the end, go through the Prize Picks board. So just had to get that out of the way, right? Get the schedule out there. And first, before we even hop into the analysis, I'll let a few people feed in here. Let's talk about what I saw on the golf course, which a few anecdotal stories, I guess, before we get into it. We ended up betting Jordan Spieth today on Prize Picks. We had an over 4.5 birdie mark, and I had a little bit of fun with it today with the Jordan Spieth. On hole number 10, he already had 3 birdies through his first 9 holes, and he was waiting on the tee box. He had about a 5-minute wait, and as a joke, I didn't think that he would even respond or hear what I had to say. I said, "Hey, Jordan, need 2 more birdies out of you, buddy. Got a lot of money riding on it." He looks at me, he smiles, and he goes, "Hey, do you think I'm not trying, man? I'm +4 to start the day." I was looking at him, I laugh, and I go, "Hey, it'd be sick if you got like 4 or 5 more for all I care." And he said, "Bet." He went out there, he made 4 more birdies. After he made the 4th, I said, "You're the GOAT, Jordan." He looked at me and just gave a little tip of the cap. So he definitely remembered what I had to say. But at an event like this, you're not going to find interaction like that at a packed tour event where there's thousands and thousands of people. I'm glad I'm here. That's all I have to say. If you ever get a chance to attend a tour event that is going to have low attendance, don't look at it as a negative. That's all I have to say. It's probably the best situation you could have as a fan. So I'm thrilled to be out here over the last few days, and also had an interaction with Matty Fitz, which wasn't as positive, but it was also pretty funny. I talked about the one I had with Sahith yesterday, but Matty Fitz, through his first 12 holes, only had 2 birdies, and he ended up missing like a 5-footer on the easiest hole in the golf course for birdie. And naturally, I gave him a little jab. I said, "Hey, that's enough pars, Fitz. It's like, we got to get birdies on the board." He just gave me the biggest death stare you could ever see. So, of course, Jordan Spieth, was a little bit more in tune with it, kind of played along with it. Matty Fitz didn't want any of that type of talk. So, it's what it is. Either way, there's a reason why I don't like Matty Fitz. There's a reason why Jordan Spieth is my favorite golfer on tour. And I think that's a perfect example of why, right? One of them doesn't take themselves too seriously. One does on the unfortunate half. And I even had, guys, look at this. I had the Brookline shirt on, the US Open shirt. I was doing everything I possibly could to pander towards Matty Fitz, to try and egg him on to go out there and have a good day. And of course, he ended up pushing the prop. So I have this damn shirt on for no reason. He went out there, only made 4 birdies today, which, by the way, was like the average. That's why I took him over 4 birdies. He pushed for me. And of course, Jordan Spieth smashes, right? So like, if I hated Matty Fitz before, if I loved Jordan Spieth before, that's only going to be the case going forward. So I can see Nick's already down there. He says Fitz is a baby. I agree. And yeah, we'll get to your questions a little bit later, Nick, but I like your thinking on those top 2 players. Kawa struck the ball pretty well today. Could not make a putt. On the other hand, though, JT, he lost over 4 strokes putting the last time I checked. Yeah, he could be in for that John Rahm round. So let's get this thing started. Stories aside, Jordan Spieth is a boss. Matty Fitz, not so much. Let's talk about how the golf course played, which was actually a little bit surprising. It played easier in round 2 than it did in round 1. That was not due to the firmness of the greens. They were running at 15s today. So we got the official stimp meter reading by a few people on the broadcast. I saw it on Twitter while I was out there on the golf course. They're running at true 15s, which you'll never see. Even at major championships at Kiowa Island, I believe they ran at like 14 and a halves for that event. That's the fastest that you're going to see. At this event, they're running at 15s. And a lot of that is because of the lack of wind. And I can tell you, much like I saw overnight, they were running all of the rollers again. They didn't have any of the sprinklers out there. They weren't watering the greens by hand, which tells me that they want to continue to make these faster. So the scoring average was 1.3 under par. If you remember for the Palmetto, it was actually zero point 0.7 shots over par. Even with moving day pins, which typically are a little bit easier than you see there for Friday, I think it's going to get harder. Just, I can't see a situation where if they continue to roll these greens, if they continue to make them firmer and faster, that it eventually doesn't catch up to players, particularly if they choose pin locations that are extremely risk reward dependent, where if you miss, you're going to be penalized heavily, and if you hit, you're going to hit it to like 2 or 3 feet. So I think that's what we see here. A scoring average, particularly because the weather isn't as advantageous too. We'll get to that here in a second. It's probably closer to like maybe half a stroke under, if not closer to even par. And the main factor here is the wind. So on Saturday, we're looking at a wind forecast that's a lot more severe than we've seen over the first 2 days. The wind gusts are a lot higher. So they're there in the like 14 to 23 mile an hour range for the entire day. Whereas for the first 2 days, you can see they maxed out at right around 5 miles an hour. And on Thursday, we had it up there. It also maxed out at a similar type of number. On this slate, we have it maxing out at 23. It's consistently in that 13 to 14 mile an hour range. The sustained winds aren't all that much higher, right? You were 2 to 3 miles an hour here on Saturday. Oh, sorry, I should say on Friday. And I can confirm that that's accurate. There was pretty much no wind to be had out there. On Saturday, though, you're going to have a constant little, I don't know, breeze out there at the very least. I won't call it like, wind gusts or anything like that, but an 8 to 9 mile an hour breeze, which is going to, at the very least, slightly affect players when they're playing into wind and make greens a little bit harder to hold when they're playing downwind. So the course should play slightly more difficult just from the weather angle alone, but with them rolling all of these surfaces, the lack of water that they're putting on the golf course, from at least what I can tell, it should get slightly more difficult. So scoring average, maybe half a stroke under par. I wouldn't be surprised. I just want to get that out there right now. If in one of these last 2 rounds, whether it's for Saturday or for Sunday, particularly on Sunday, where they're using harder pin locations, typically on Sundays is when they make it the most difficult. I wouldn't be surprised if it plays over par one of the next 2 days, and let alone both of them. I mean, if it plays over par tomorrow, you can almost be assured that that's going to be the case there on Sunday as well. And that is historically what we've seen. And again, it's only a one event sample size, what we've seen around this venue. So I'll go ahead and hop over to the player pool now, and I will talk about some of my top plays, which I have a bunch of them on here today, a little bit more than usual because we have more time, right? Yesterday, I had to get everything done in about 30-minute live stream. Today, we can go a little bit longer if we'd like to. So up top, John, I should say Nick kind of pointed this out a little bit earlier, but JT, right, is the first guy I want to touch on here. And his ball striking was pretty typical from a JT, gained just under a stroke off the tee today on approach, gained, I believe, just over a stroke on his round, and lost over 4 strokes on the greens. That's not going to happen very often for JT. John Rahm also lost a very significant amount on the greens for round 1, and then came out there and he shot -9 today. He set a brand new course record of 62 at this golf course. If he would have just parred the last hole, he would have ended up with a 61, even furthering that course record from what he already set today. JT is capable of doing that same thing. He's going off towards the morning wave. Now, he's not one of the first few players off, but he's still going off there in the top, I don't know, first 5 to 6 groups that are going off. He's in the first like 18 players. $10,200, 11% owned. I'm taking the same sort of shot on JT as I took on John Rahm today. I also played a lot of Scotty Scheffler. Now, Scotty Scheffler, what ended up shooting like 3 under par, they're pretty decent. He made like 6 or 7 birdies on the day. He didn't have a perfect round, but I could see JT at the very worst kind of having the round that Scotty Scheffler had today, if not spiking the hot putter and then getting to that John Rahm sort of round. So the ball striking has been there. Just he's had an uncharacteristically bad putter. And then on Bermuda, this is the one huge bright side for JT, is typically where he putts his best. So we don't see a lot of those negative, huge, like 2, 3, 4 strokes negative sort of rounds that you have with a JT going forward. I don't think that happens again. I think we see a huge bounce back, like Nick was saying, and $10,200. I think it's a perfect price tag. So yeah, I'm getting there for sure. Let's see what we're going on. Douglas says, sadly, I checked out after Hatton's double on the first hole. A major pet peeve I have is getting a double worse on the first hole. Yeah, I don't know, man. I didn't play him today, but if you double the first hole, yeah, that's pretty atrocious, particularly when the first hole isn't all that difficult, like it is around this golf course. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't see it, right? I wasn't there in person watching Terrell Hatton on his first hole. I can't imagine it went very well though, because he tends to be a little bit hot-headed, and when he's making a double bogey, you're gonna know about it. You're gonna hear multiple f bombs. One thing I'll say today is when somebody went out there and swore, you heard it like 3 holes over. There was one time I heard an F-bomb, and I swear it might have been Terrell Hatton, and it sounded like it came from at least 2 holes over. So maybe that was Terrell Hatton doing that early in his round on hole like number 3 or 4, something like that. But yeah, imagine the audio on some of the TV cameras too was picking up quite a bit here this afternoon. Again, I was on the course. I wasn't able to listen to the broadcast, but I'm pretty sure they've heard some pretty nasty things over this point of the week, especially with how quiet it is out there. Nick says, "Is it Kawa season?" So I want to skip forward to that comment. So more Colin Morikawa, $8,600. He's gone down in price. He's in the 8K range now, which means he can be your third, maybe even fourth man into a lineup. He's 10.3% owned, and the ball striking to this point, just to bring up the exact metrics here, has been excellent. So let me give you the exact numbers. But to this point, I mean, he's been, I believe, top 25 in both ball striking categories. Just to give you an exact number, he's number 27 in the field off the tee. So he just fell out of that top 25, but top 15 on approach. He's top 18 around the green, and he's lost 3.5 strokes putting. So, I mean, that's kind of on brand for a Colin Morikawa, particularly when he's not in form. I mean, he's always going to go out there and gain with the ball striking around the green, a little bit hit or miss. But I like what I'm seeing right now, right? He's gaining from tee to green. He's putting himself in position, just not necessarily taking advantage of it. And if you remember, when he switched to that conventional grip, he had a few really solid tournaments early on where he was gaining 2-3 strokes to the field. So he's shown an ability to go out there and do that, go out there and gain to the field. I like him for sure. So he's in my player pool. He's $8,600. Again, only 10.3% owned. So relatively low. You can get pretty easy leverage there. Nick says, "Oh yeah, that was the JT comment that I was talking about." So definitely agree with you there. And John, the comment I was commenting about here with Han, yeah, I agree with you there. Nick says Thigala from +9 to -1, gotta be -8 tomorrow. I don't know if he's gonna do that, but one thing I'll say about him is I have him at sub 2% ownership right now. And what is he? $7,500. You bet my ass I'm getting back there, right? For sure. So yeah, do I think he's going to go -9 tomorrow? Absolutely not. But do I think he can shoot like 5-6 under? Absolutely. So that's what I'll say about that. Let's hop back up here to the top of the board. So I was kind of skipping around a little bit. Sanjay M at $9,700. He was super chalky going into the week. He was nearly like 20% owned in most contests. Now I have him at just 16.8. So it's not like he's gone down drastically, but today he was just spinning his wheels. He was playing alongside Scotty Scheffler, Cam Young. So I had a front view to a lot of his round, and it was just plenty of missed putts. He kept himself in position, was hitting fairways, putting himself to 10 to 20 feet. It just couldn't get anything to drop. And on Bermuda, we know that he's one of the best putters on the world. I'm not all that worried about it. I think that Sanjay might have just had a bad round on the greens. If he does the same thing with his ball striking and then has just an even average round with the putter, you're looking at probably like 5-6 under par, let alone if he has a ceiling round with the putter, it gets to something like we saw from Jon Rahm today. So love him at $9,700. I think that now that he's a little bit lower owned because of the bad round today, it's a perfect spot to jump on. I love Tom Kim. I just have to say that I think he's one of the best players in the world. I've said that for at least a few weeks now. $9,200. I don't care if he's chalky. I don't care if he's in form or out of form. I think I'm going to play Tom Kim for every single slate. That's just kind of a role I've been going with. It's paid off for literally the last like 8 times that I've played Tom Kim. And I wanted to include him on the live stream here just to make that evident. Pretty much every time he's on a slate, just know I'm going to be supporting him because until this point, he pretty much hasn't let us down. So love him at 16.9%. Honestly, he could be like 25% owned. I think I'd still be playing Tom Kim. The kid's just an absolute stud. Moving on to this 8K range, we talked about Morikawa, but Sam Burns at 8,700. I love him as well. He's at -4. He's only getting right around 10% ownership, so it's not like he's getting a ton of attention despite being right around the middle of the leaderboard. Love his Bermuda numbers. Off the tee distance has exactly what we're looking for. And the iron play here, let me look up the exact metrics here. It's been okay. I know that for a fact because I've seen a lot of his performance in person. But let's get the actual shots gained metric on it. So over the first 2 rounds, he's lost on approach. What? Okay, I was not expecting that because he's hit quite a few darts. He's gained a bunch off the tee like you'd expect, and he's gained 4 strokes putting. Oh boy. Maybe I only saw his good iron shots. I don't know. We're gonna have to double back on that. I still like him for tomorrow. I was gonna play him in like half of my lineups because of the approach play, what I've seen in person, but the stats don't necessarily bear that out. He's number 1 in the field in putting, and he's number like 37 when it comes to approach play. So from the stat perspective, it doesn't necessarily bear it out, but from the eye test perspective, I can tell you that the swing doesn't look all that off. I mean, he was hitting, at least from when I was watching, which was today about 6 holes. On Thursday was about a 4-hole sample size that I saw from Sam Burns. He looked fine to me. Didn't look like he was losing off the tee. Didn't look like he was losing on approach, that sort of thing. But to this point, that's what the stats say. So I don't want to say anything that's not true here. But I still like Sam Burns for tomorrow, especially if that's going to keep him lower owned. I have him at 10.6%. Now I'll probably run another set of ownership before a lock at some point. Wouldn't surprise me if he even goes down in ownership, particularly if I watch some of the content out there for Showdown and they're kind of talking bad about him because of the approach stats. That might make me like him a little bit more. So we'll have to see there. I'm not counting on him gaining 4 strokes on approach anymore. He clearly is going to have to gain on approach and gain on off the tee to have any sort of chance of getting to that ceiling performance. But we can pretty much count on that from Sam Burns. He's one of the best players in the world when it comes to that perspective. Like Hideki here, I didn't talk him up as a core pick yesterday, but I know we had a few questions about Hideki. He didn't quite have the best round today, which I did play him for Showdown today, so it didn't really pay off, but I'm willing to go back there as he's a perfect course fit here. Decent Bermuda putter. You can see right around a neutral, which for him is actually a plus compared to his baseline. But most specifically, a good long iron player, and off the tee has the distance that we're looking for. And he's only $8,200. And we know that Hideki is a much better player than Keegan, than even Terrell Hatton or Lowry, especially a better player than an Aaron Wise, than a Taylor Montgomery as well at this point. The only players that you can really argue are on the same level, or maybe a Sam Burns, we know Morikawa is, and then all these 9 and 10K options, which are top 10, top 15 players in the world. So you're getting essentially a top 15 player in the world for $8,200. And I don't care if he's not in the form. We're dealing with Saturday Showdown. And oh boy, I got to take a sip of whiskey for this because we're going to go on a little bit of a rant here, boys. People want to act on Saturday Showdown like they're getting placement points. And I just want to make this evident right here. Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm are both 40% plus owned. And I know I went through the 10K range without talking about them because if you've been here for any length of time on the channel, if you've been following my content, you know I'm never going to play the guys up at the top of the board, particularly for round 3 Showdown, because for whatever reason, all of the casuals that are on a Friday night, they're drinking like me, right? I guess they don't have the tolerance that I do with alcohol, or just not, I guess, experience with DFS as I am. They go out there and they think that for Saturday Showdown, it matters playing the guys at the top of the board, that those placement points that you're getting for Sunday Showdown are the same thing for Saturday. And players like a Rory, a Jon Rahm, for example, end up being a lot higher owned than they probably should be. And in the same type of situation, I'll get to you in a second. I didn't mean to bring your comment up there, Jack, but I will get to you in a second. The same sort of situation, like an Aaron Wise, is going to be a lot higher owned than he should be. A Cameron Davis down here at $8,000 is going to be probably twice as owned as he should be. A Kurt Kitayama is over 10% owned because he's there at minus 11. Let's see. Lee Hodges, who had an awesome round today. We played him at $6,200 in Showdown, is going to be extremely chalky because of his position on the leaderboard. All of those players, while they're capable of going out there and putting up like a 4 or 5 under performance, are not worth it. They're 2, sometimes 3 or 4 times as owned as they should be. They're more expensive than they should be because the pricing reflects. And by the way, if you didn't know this, the pricing comes out right around midway through the round. So anybody that teed off in the first half of the day that played well is going to be more expensive than everybody in the PM wave, because guys in the PM wave hardly get moved based on their score. Yet the guys in the morning have huge adjustments based on how they've played through the first, like, I don't know, like 11 to 12 holes. And usually those players haven't even finished their round. So, for example, Justin Thomas, $10,200. He's more expensive than Scotty because if you saw early in the day, JT was -5. He was, I believe, like 3 under through his first like 4 or 5 holes and then completely fell apart down the stretch. Pricing came out right when he was -5, right when he was at the peak of his score today, and that's why he's a little bit more expensive. So those sort of players go drastically under-owned because they're quote unquote overpriced, right? That sort of effect shouldn't matter all that much. You're just looking for quality of player. Placement points don't matter. We know that. And second off, almost everyone in the field is projecting for the same value. I mean, guys up here at the top are projecting for right around 44 points. The lowest guy on the board, I mean, I'm showing you Bio Kim, right? He's not even a PGA Tour member. We're going to talk about him later on. He's projecting for 31.6 points. That's what? A 13-point differential over the entire slate for your projections. These guys up top aren't all that much better, right? On a one round sample size than the guys at the bottom of the board. So ownership is really the name of the game, right? Especially when all the projections are so condensed for like we have here in Showdown. You want to fade the guys that are 40% owned. And John Rahm's like 45%. Rory McIlroy's just over 40% owned there. And if both of them end up failing, that's 85% of the field, actually a little bit more than 85% of the field that you've boxed out there. You're playing against just 15% of the field. And if that's a 2,000 entry contest, that's 300 other people that you're competing against. And if you're playing 20 lineups, you can probably beat those 300 other people, right? Particularly if your 20 lineups are a part of those 300 people. So that's the thought process. That's why you want to fade those guys up top. And it's that same sort of strategy when you're talking about an Aaron Wise, when you're talking about a Cameron Davis, who I love at this course. I played them for 4 round stuff. Like full disclosure, I loved them this week. So I'm glad that they're playing well. And I think that they probably should play well here for the next round, but they're not worth it for Showdown. They're not worth it at that ownership level. And the same thing could be said for Billy Ho, a Kurt Kitayama that we talked about, and then, somebody like a Lee Hodges or a KH Lee. We'll catch up on chat now. I know there were a few comments. Jack says, you're on Tom Kim and Shane Lowry, but you would be shocked if either Rory McIlroy or John Rahm doesn't win it. I think that one of them might win for sure over the next 2 days. But for Showdown, I don't know if they're optimal. So I'm not going to be on them for Showdown. I have a lot of John Rahm for my 4 round stuff. So I kind of hope he's the one that takes it home. The thing I'll say about Rory is that, like, the course fit is great for him. I didn't think it was going to be going into the week. I thought that accuracy might be a little bit more important. But as I've seen the golf course, as I've walked it, as we've looked at the leaderboard over the first 2 rounds, it's become extremely obvious to me that off the tee distance matters, particularly when you're cutting off the corners. So I think that Rory's got a shot, but John Rahm's accuracy, right? Like if it comes down to Sunday nerves and I have to pick somebody to go out there and shoot 3 under par no matter what to go out there and win, it's going to be John Rahm because he's going to keep himself in play, right? He's not going to open up a bunch of those double, triple bogeys. Whereas a Rory McIlroy, we've seen him have the nerves off the tee, right? Just remember, I think it was just after the RBC Canadian Open, he made like a quad bogey on a hole, and it was almost entirely the yips off the tee. And then he yipped his second shot into the hazard as well. Ended up having to hit like his 5th shot off the tee into the fairway, which might have been at the RBC Canadian, or maybe it was the event after that. He's shown some of that yips, right? And at this golf course, that's the one thing I'll say. If you miss 40, 50 yards offline here, you're done. You're usually in a penalty area at the very least. If not, you're in like fescue grass that's up to your waist. You're taking an unplayable at the very best. If not, taking a drop. I mean, you're honestly hoping that it's a red area. You're hoping that it's a hazard so that you can take your free drop with 1 club length. Because if not, if you're in an area that's not marked off as a hazard, then you have to take an unplayable, and then you have to drop within 2 club lengths of your ball, which a lot of times in those areas is still in the fescue. Like that's the issue with some of these inaccurate drivers, at least from the outright perspective, is they could get into contention on Sunday and then just blow up. Like I could see that for Rory. Like I honestly, like I hate to make the early call here. Rory McIlroy is going to be in contention. I can almost tell you that guaranteed. I feel like he's going to get into the top 5, top 3, maybe even be winning this event, and then just make some stupid big score, like a 7 or an 8 on a par 4. and play himself out of it. I just that's how I see it on playing. And somebody like John Rahm, you hope that he can keep it in the fairway or at least keep it in play with his accuracy. And that's how he'd win, almost like a war of attrition over 4 rounds here. That's what you saw with Jordan Spieth on round one. Who else played atrocious round one? Um, well, today, Davis Riley played atrocious. He had that sort of round. No one is immune to that. If you get a little bit offline off the tee, you're going to run into some really big numbers. So I tend to agree with you, Jack. Um, if I had to pick one of those 4 players, I'd have to say John Rahm or Tom Kim. Tom Kim's that same sort of driver, right? He's not going to get himself into much trouble off the tee. That's going to be really valuable here over 4 rounds because I kind of made a call here after round one, too. I believe it was Jordan Spieth had a really bad round. So did Max Homa. I was like, everyone's going to have one of those days where I mean, even with Max Homa, like today, his ball striking was unbelievable. It's almost crazy to me that he went out there and he shot over par in round one. I almost couldn't even believe it because through his first 5 holes, he had 4 birdies. On hole number 5, he hit a shot from 190 yards to right around 6 inches. And it was an uphill shot, a blind shot to a pin that he couldn't even see and hit it to 6 inches. I mean, that sort of player shot over par the day before. That's what I mean. Like, even if you're in form, you have amazing ball striking for this sort of golf course, you're completely in play to shoot like 5, 6 over par. It's just one of those sort of golf courses. So I would expect some volatility, but yeah, man, John Rahm's got a good shot at it. Let's move on into this 8K range. So we talked about Sam Burns a little bit, Hideki Matsuyama as well. I love Emiliano Grillo. So $7,900. Got the distance off the tee I'm looking for, is extremely accurate into greens as well. And on Bermuda is his best self. And if you look at his putting stats of late, Emiliano Grillo in general has been an absolute heater. So you'll see here he's gaining 0.5 shots per round on the greens. If you compare that to his baseline, it's about a stroke better than what he's used to for his career. But at this point, I think we just got to get used to it. He's been doing it for at least 3 months at this point, gaining on the greens. And to this point of the week, the ball striking has been there. And just to give you the stats here, the putting has not been. So he's kind of been returning to what we're used to seeing from Grillo. But if he can get that hot putter, I think he's got a ceiling round in him. So just to give you the exact stats, off the tee, 2.1 strokes gained, on approach, 0.9 strokes gained, and on the greens, 2.7 strokes lost. So like I said, very much so on brand for an Emiliano Grillo. But if he can turn that putter around like he's had for the last 3, 4 months at this point, you're looking at a ceiling round, 6, 7 under par, and that might be what you have to have tomorrow. So $7,900, definitely in my pool. Love McNeely and Mitchell. Almost want to group them together here. You have McNeely at $7,700, $7,600. Keith Mitchell -3, -2 respectively. So they're not getting a ton of attention from the ownership market. What I like here are their volatility. McNeely, one of the best putters you're going to find on tour. And then Keith Mitchell, one of the best off the tee players that you're going to find on tour. At the 3M Open, Keith Mitchell was able to make 9 straight birdies, which was, I believe, at least for that season, the longest streak that they had. McNeely had a streak of 7 birdies just a few events ago. So you know they're aggressive. You know they're more than capable of going out there and spiking a ceiling performance. And at this golf course, and McNeely, like he's not a bomber like somebody like a Keith Mitchell is, but he's still way longer than average for the PGA Tour player. I think they both are solid plays. So 9.9% ownership on McNeely, 8.6% on a Keith Mitchell. I think both of them are players that you should be willing to get leverage on. In terms of 7K options, I love SH Kim. So SH Kim was chalk going into the week. He was 10% plus owned in GPPs. He's over par now. He doesn't look all that sharp this week, but I think he's just a better player than people are giving him credit for. I mean, before the week, people were treating him like he was a much better player than his price tag. I think people were buying in on the hype, saying that maybe SH Kim is just, maybe like a Sunjay Im sort of player, or, one of these top end guys that are just willing, or should say worth of like an $8,000, $9,000 price tag. Now people want to give up on him after 2 bad rounds. And those are the kind of situations that I'm just licking my chops at, right? People want to give up on a guy just because he's had a few bad rounds. I mean, just come on, man, right? Like we got to give a larger sample size to these sort of players, because look at the last 24 rounds for SH Kim. I mean, he's been outstanding to this point. You can see here gaining in every category, I should say, like about two of them, right? He's losing on approach and losing around the green, but gaining zero point 0.6 strokes off the tee and 1.9 strokes on the greens, 1.9 strokes per round on the greens. Just ridiculous stuff you don't see very often. That gives him a huge ceiling when it comes to his performances. And at the Shriners, the last time that we saw him, he went out there and he was gaining on approach and gaining on off the tee. So I believe he was top 5 in the field in shots gained off the tee. So you can see he's gaining zero point 0.6 strokes per round. That's something that we can kind of expect from an SH Kim. He's both long and accurate off the tee, a very solid putter of the golf ball too. I think it's a spot to buy back in on him. Davis Riley, I'm going right back to it. He's just somebody I just can't quit. I have to say it, right? Davis Riley, I can't quit that upside. It's too intriguing to me. We know that he's a much better player than $6,900. We know that he's a much better player than shooting 5 over par. And I have him at 2.2% projected ownership. So nobody's going to get to him. You guys know I'm not against ever going to somebody that's a little bit of a greasy play, somebody that's a little bit, it makes your stomach turn a little bit when you're thinking about playing them. But at $6,900, the upside is there. So I have to be there with a Davis Riley. Same thing with Harris English. He shot over par today, which was surprising. He had the really solid first round. He's played this golf course a lot. He's another one of those ambassadors like a Kevin Kisner, a JT Poston that plays this golf course all the time. You can see Poston's +4 and Kisner. Oh boy. By the way, Kisner is one of the funniest guys alive. Where's Kiz on here? He can't be too expensive, right? Yeah. He's +5 at this point. He's $6,500. None of those ambassadors have really killed it out there. Kisner makes sense, right? It's a super long golf course, which is always going to be tough for Kisner. But one thing I got to say about him is the guy's hilarious. I was sitting there on number 10. So the exact hole that I actually met Jordan Spieth on, I was talking to him about making the birdies and whatnot. Kisner was the group ahead of them. And he was waiting on the tee for a solid like 5 to 10 minutes. And he looks at Morikawa and he goes, you know what? I know why we're sitting here waiting on every hole, because these damn guys in front of us can't make a putt for their lives. Now, granted, the other two players in the group are dog shit, but it had Cam Davis in it. And Cam Davis is 10 under par, right? He was in the lead for a really solid amount of time today. So I don't know if I buy that from Kevin Kisner, but nonetheless, it was hilarious. And he said it loud enough, and I felt like this was on purpose so that the entire crowd could hear. I mean, he made it very obvious that he was taking a shot at the group ahead of him. I believe it was somebody who was +2. The other guy in the group was like +5. And then it was Cam Davis that was -10. So he was clearly carrying the group. But Kevin Kisner does not hold back. He's one of my favorite players on tour for that reason. No filter. You absolutely got to love it. Let's go into the bottom end of the 6K range now. So we talked to Davis Riley, Harris English there. There are two Korean options that I'm getting to, and it's because of their birdie production. First up, Yosop Seao. So that's how you say his name. I actually met Yosop today, said what's up, gave him a little fist bump. He made like 8 birdies today. Let me go ahead and count them. I know at one point it was like 6, because when I saw his scorecard, I had almost a little gasp at what I saw there. But let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He made 7 birdies today. And he shot like 4 over par for Josep Seao. Now, in Showdown, that was a pretty decent performance, because a lot of those bogeys were like a double bogey on one hole. He made a quad bogey on the same hole, that sort of thing. But he made 7 birdies. So over a third of the time, he was going out there and making birdie. And based on what I saw from this Seao guy, he plays like a Siwoo Kim. He gives no fucks out there. He's going to take aim at every single pin, go at it, balls to the wall. And I love that for Showdown. He's $6,200. No one's going to play him. I mean, literally no one is going to play Josep Seao this week. And he's 6 over par, 0.2% out. And just to give you an idea of the shots gained, I actually have no idea what this is going to look at. I never looked at this with Seao. Let's see what we've got. So get this. To this point of the week, he has lost 4 strokes off the tee, lost 2 strokes on approach, and gained 3 strokes putting. So he's getting it done with the putter, right? Losing a bunch of strokes off the tee. So that's telling me he's hitting it into hazards and whatnot. Just clean it up, right? Keep the ball in play, put yourself in position, and ride on that hot putter you've had over the first 2 rounds. I think he's at least got a chance to get to that ceiling performance. So I'm playing him at $6,200. Also playing Bio Kim, another player that had a bunch of birdie production today. And I'm going to look up his scorecard and shots gained metrics for you guys as well. Bio Kim is an extremely aggressive player that we've heard of before. Both aggressive from the playing standpoint and the physical standpoint. He was out there in one of these tour events in Asia. You guys may have actually seen this headline with him. He gave like the finger to the crowd after winning an Asian tour event. He won an event. Apparently, they were rooting for like their hometown guy rather than Bio Kim. So when he went out in there and won, he told the crowd to go F themselves during the interview and then gave them the finger. So that's Bio Kim. You gotta love a guy with a little bit of feistiness to him. Just gotta say that. But let's look at his shots gain metrics. To this point, is gaining on the putter, gaining around the green, and losing with the ball striking. So kind of similar to Seo. Does not look great from the shots gained perspective. But these are the aggressive sort of Korean players that you're looking for. And based on pedigree, like when we were going into the week, we knew that Bio Kim was one of the best players that qualified for this golf tournament just because he's played in a few PGA Tour sanctioned events before. And Seo, I haven't done a ton of research into his game, but I've seen him at a few of these DP World Tour events before. I've seen him, but a few times at like an Open Championship, for example. He's qualified for a few events that may surprise you. So he's clearly a better pedigree player than I think a lot of people recognize him for. So yeah, I like getting to these two unknown options down low because they're at least putting up birdies, right? They're putting up the production that we're looking for. Particularly Seo, who made those 7 birdies today. When I was out there on the course and I saw his scorecard, I almost couldn't believe it. I mean, especially when I saw like the 8 that he had on the par 4. It was just a tough scene for him out there, right? Especially score wise, but fantasy perspective wise, you gotta love what you're seeing there. He's putting those breadcrumbs down there to go out there and have a really good round. What we'll do now is we'll go through DraftKings and Prize Picks. So we're going to go through a DraftKings lineup together and then hop into the Prize Picks board. So feel free to drop any questions you have into the chat. And I can see we have a comment down there to touch on. So Mark Green says, Danny Willett seems to be having a mini renaissance. Interesting to see if he can bag a top 10. Yeah, I mean, he got into contention, should have won the golf tournament at the Fortinet. I think that's something that people just conveniently kind of forget to talk about, is that Danny Willett probably should have won that event. But yeah, let me bring up Danny Willett's stats. Because honestly, I haven't followed him at all. I haven't even seen him on the golf course, which I've seen most of the players in the field on the golf course. I haven't seen Danny Willett to this point. Let's see. He's gaining a bunch on the greens. His next best stat is around the green, where he's 28th. He's 38th off the tee and 51st on approach. Ooh. I hope you're right, man, because I think that Danny Willett deserves it, particularly after what he had happen to him at that Fortinet championship. But he's getting it all done with the putter, so I'm not going to be there for Showdown. But hey, Mark, if there's anybody that I'm rooting for, it's Danny Willett. He's a really good guy. That's extremely evident from the types of interviews that he does. He's a good guy. Let's talk through some of the lineups that we can make here, though. So from a GPP perspective, I mean, just fade the top 2 guys. Like, I'm not even going to like sugarcoat it. Like, normally I'm like, oh, if you really like Rory, oh, if you really like Jon Rahm, go ahead and play them. You're a fucking slapdick if you play Rory McIlroy or Jon Rahm tomorrow. They're going to be 40% plus owned. So if you want to get leverage to them and you want to be a slapdick, right, you have to lock them. You have to play them in every single lineup that you're playing. And if you really think that they're going to go out there and 100% of the time succeed, then sure, give me, I don't know, minus 400 odds on them not to go out there and have success. Like give me the odds that you're implying that, right? I'll pay you for literally any amount of money that you have, or I should say that I have access to. I'll literally play for every cent I have on that sort of bet. It's not, when they're being owned 40, 50% of lineups, like they are like in like half of lineups, like they're implied right now, they're not 5 times more likely than a JT to succeed. They're not twice as likely as a Scotty Scheffler to succeed. They're not 3 times as likely as a Sungjae Im to succeed. 4 times as likely as a Holland or Fitzpatrick to succeed. That's how much their ownership is reflecting, right? It's 3-4 times the ownership of one of these other players. Just no thank you, right? I think you're a slapdick if you think you should lock either of those 2 players. And I'd love to hear the argument for it, right? Like, sure, they're playing well to this point, but do you really think that means that you should lock them tomorrow in a single round sample size for the most volatile sport in the world of golf? I mean, let's look at it. Let's look at their shots gained metrics. Let's see if it's truly that telling that we should play one of those 2 players up top. So let's look at it right now. Jon Rahm over his first 2 rounds. I'm sure the putters look good because he made a bunch of long putts today. Let's see. Putter, he's gained 3 strokes. And sure, he's gained 2 strokes off the tee and 1.4 strokes on approach. But his best stat the 7th off the tee, right? He's the number 7 player off the tee. If we look at Rory McIlroy, right, who's there at -9, let's look at his stats. Through the first 2 rounds, he's gained a bunch off the tee, like Rory McIlroy always does, but only gained 1 stroke on approach. Do we really think that somebody that's gained 1.4 strokes on approach and 1 stroke on approach over the first 2 rounds are absolute slam dunks to go out there and have a good round 3? Absolutely not, right? We know that approach play is the most consistent stat from round to round. Neither of those 2 players has killed it over the first 2 days. They've been decent. They put themselves in position, that's for sure, but they're not absolutely scorching the field there. So I don't think they're anywhere nearly worth 40, 50% ownership like you see for them right now. So let's just start lineups here with like a JT, right? Let's take a JT there. Let's put Tom Kim in the lineup too. I just love Tom Kim at this point. Kid has not let me down at all. Literally every time I've played Tom Kim. And this is before it was like cool to play Tom Kim. If you guys remember, if you go back on the channel, watch some of the content, I was talking, and I'm not kidding here, I was talking up Tom Kim before anybody else was. I played him multiple times before the Wyndham Championship, 4 times before the Wyndham. In fact, he made the cut every single time. He had one that was like a 25th place finish, but outside of that, it was all top 15s. He was posting those top 15s, top 20s over his first 4 to 5 starts. He won at the Wyndham. He impressed, obviously over the last 2 to 3 events with another win there. The stellar performance at the President's Cup. He's trending in the right direction. But yeah, Tom Kim, I've been on for quite some time. So it's not like this is a recent thing with Tom Kim. So I'm definitely getting back there. He's going to be a little bit more chalky than a JT, but I'm willing to get there as long as I'm taking a pivot like JT up top. Now, if I was taking, and again, this is just slapdick move in my opinion. If I was taking Rory McIlroy up top, I sure shit wouldn't be taking Tom Kim. So let's go ahead and put JT back in there. We have 76.5 remaining in terms of our salary. Let's see. Let's go into the 8K range. I'm not going to play Cam Davis because of his rounds. I love Hideki Matsuyama. I guess it makes sense. Yeah, we could put Hideki in there at 8,200. In the mid 7K range, we're looking for a pivot here too, especially because we have Tom Kim, who's going to be like 18, maybe 20% owned. In the mid 7K range, I think Mito Pereira is going to be like medium ownership. So let's try to be a little bit more unique about it. Let's take Keith Mitchell, right? He's single digit, like we talked about before. We have 7,400 remaining. We probably want to take another top of the 7K option. Let's take Rio, another relatively low-owned player. And again, we can't click the last player in here because of the Draftkings rules out there. They want to be a little bit of a party pooper, but you guys get the idea. There's a few guys at $6,900 that make sense. One specifically that we talked up on the video here. That's who I would round out that sort of lineup with. So there's one guy that's going to be a little bit higher owned than a Tom Kim, but pivots in a JT, Matsuyama, Keith Mitchell, and Griot. The whole idea here is to get leverage to the field. Remember, round 3 showdown, there is no placement points to deal with. You're just looking for pure scoring upside. And these sort of players are my favorite players in the field, right? We're looking for approach first specialists that are long off the tee, that play well on Bermuda. JT, long off the tee, solid Bermuda putter, good on approach. Tom Kim checks all 3 of those boxes. Hideki, solid approach player and off the tee. He's his best self on Bermuda, right? He's not the best Bermuda putter in the world. Keith Mitchell checks all 3 emphatically. Emiliano Grillo checks all 3 emphatically. And the one guy we talked about at $6,900 checks all of those boxes emphatically. So I hate to give away like the nuts here, but I think that combination of 6 that I'm talking about there might just end up being the nuts. Let's go over the prize picks now, talk through a few of the props that I like. So I wasn't able to do my write-up yet, so I don't have a full idea of actually what I'm playing for tomorrow, but I did do a full glance through the board before we went on stream here, and it looks like not a lot moved. They kept a lot of the guys at 5 that were at 5 before. They added a few new names to the board. So they added a Cam Davis. They added a Sam Burns there, which is always great to see. With the strokes board, they kept it extremely consistent. They hardly moved anybody. Again, a few new names like a Sam Burns they added to the board. So let's talk through them. So for birdie or better, it's a lot of overs that I'm taking, particularly for a moving day here. Love Scotty Scheffler at 4.5. Love JT at 4.5. I think you got to slam those. Sam Burns, one of the highest birdie percentage players on tour. You got to consider, and honestly, Cameron Davis and Max Homa, you got to include in that same sort of conversation. And a Tom Kim at 4.5. So those are plenty. At least as of right now, 6 players that I imagine I'm taking overs for birdie or better on. Um, even with the wins, right? Like, so we talked about the wins earlier, which are definitely going to be a factor. It's why some of the scores for my projected points for Showdown are a little bit lower. But I think part of that's going to be offset by the fact that the pin locations are going to be extremely risk reward heavy. And when we're looking at birdie or better, it doesn't matter how many bogeys you're making, right? So when you're going for the pins that are tucked, that when you hit it onto the green, you're going to get rewarded. Actually, your ball is going to go closer to the pin with some of these moving day pin locations. When you miss, you're going to be in a really bad spot, right? So just to give you an example, on moving day, like the best example of a pin location is they'll put a pin just over a bunker, but right over a bunker with a backstop behind it, right? So where if you hit it onto the green, you get it to that pin location, all of the slope is going to encourage the ball to go closer to the pin. But if you miss the green, right? So this is why they put it just over the bunker. You're going to have a short-sided shot. That's going to be extremely difficult to get the ball close to. That's the idea of moving day. That's what you're going to see with most of the pins out there. So anytime we're playing moving day pins, I almost completely avoid strokes because you're going to have players, particularly those that are playing from further down the leaderboard, that play more aggressively, that try to go for it, that try to make up ground on the entire field. That's going to only be more so the case with a no cut event, with players that are even further behind the 8 ball because they weren't cut after the first 2 rounds. So, strokes, unless there's a massive edge to be had, I'm not likely to play very much over there. With birdies are better, on the other hand, you don't have to worry about some of those double, triple bogeys that might end up coming out there. So, that's the idea there. With birdie or better matchups, I mean, there's always guys you can look at here. Um, I don't really know what much to say here other than hopefully it didn't unmute there for very long, guys. Sorry about that. Hopefully you can hear me now, though. Let me check my settings. 1 second. So my audio, it's using my Yeti, so you should be able to hear me now. But hopefully it didn't cut out there for too long. What I was saying though with birdie or better matchups is that I think that a lot of them are fair. There's gonna be a few that I like, but check out my Patreon to see exactly who I like there. Let's go over to greens regulation. Very consistent board with what we've seen over the first few days. And if anybody can let me know in chat my mic's better, that'd be great. With birdie or better, I'm sorry, say green regulation, because it's so consistent. I mean, I don't think there's a huge edge to be had. You have a lot of guys that were hitting 14, 15 greens, and a lot of guys that were hitting 10 or 11 greens. So it seems, if you have your ball striking, you're going to hit like 14 or 15. If you don't, you're probably going to go well under your prop. So there's not a massive edge, but if anything, I'd be leaning under just because the average is right around 12 greens. But I learned my lesson today. I mean, this is why I'm mentioning this. This is why I'm saying it's volatile. The average was 12. And I took an under on Ricky Fowler today and Billy Horschel, right, at 13 greens. Two of the more inconsistent iron players that we have on tour, and both went well over their prop, which makes no sense. I mean, you had guys like JT that went under, guys like Fitz, Tom Kim that went under. A lot of these, I mean, Rory McIlroy that went under his green regulation prop. These elite tier guys all went under, yet Billy Ho, fucking Ricky Fowler of all fucking people, went out there and went over their prop today. I mean, by the way, and out of the 11 props that I took, those were the only two that didn't hit. Were Ricky Fowler and Billy Horschel today. So I don't want to endorse this greens regulation board too much. It burned the shit out of me today. If anything, I'd be taking unders. I do want to say that from the stat perspective, but boy, oh boy, were those annoying. And with fairways hit, they have bumped this into oblivion. Do not bet on fairways hit. You're getting an average for this event right around 10.5 fairways, which for the Palmetto was closer to 9.5. So clearly this field's getting a much better job done. But now Keegan Bradley is at 10 fairways. And for a lot of tour events, if you remember, like 10 fairways is usually what the elite guys are at, let alone guys like a Keegan Bradley, Jason Day, Gary Woodland. If anything, I'd be taking unders, I suppose, but it's not like the difference between the bottom and the top of the board is all that much, right? It's 11.5 fairways down to 10 fairways. So what, 1.5 difference? I mean, when you get down here to John Rahm, it's a 1 fairway difference between the top end and the bottom end of the board. I like fading like a Gary Woodland, right? He's not a very accurate driver of the golf ball. I like fading a Jason Day. I like fading Jordan Spieth. I mean, he's not very accurate off the tee, even though I love that guy to death. He's kind of miss a lot of fairways. I mean, Cameron Davis, okay, smash prop of the century. This is gonna get bumped. I can guarantee you. Like I'd probably enter this in the next 5 minutes. Pick your favorite prop of another sport. Cameron Davis is gonna get bumped down from 10.5. There's zero chance that stays there. There's also zero chance that he hits 12 fairways. And I hate to say that there's like a lock out there, but this is like the lock of the century. Under 12, under 11 fairways for Cameron Davis. Okay, what's he done over the first 2 days? Like he has to have gone over under some fluke chance because there's no shot they'd put him at that kind of fairway number. Let's see. What did he do here? Because I'm sure he went over. He had to have. Yeah, he did, right? So in day one, he got 12. Today, he got 11. That's not going to happen again. Again. Mic unplugged again. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. Hopefully, that wasn't too long there. They have Cameron Davis at 11 fairways, yet he averages 8 fairways per day. Yeah, hopefully, we're good now, Craig. Hopefully, you can hear me. By the way, I'm in a hotel. There, the software here isn't working very well. Hopefully, you can hear me now, though. They have Cameron Davis at 11 fairways. He hits on average. So his average is. Let me bring up the percentage once again. He hits on average 55.7% of fairways, right? So if you take 14 fairways, multiply it by 0.557, you have 7.79 fairways. It bumped on the stream. Are you kidding me? I told you guys that this was going to get bumped and it got bumped while we were on stream. So I said it was going to go from 11 to down to a 10 and a half. It did it while we were on here on stream. So, I mean, we'll just leave it at that. Absolutely. So that is all I've got for this live stream, guys. Glad to know that I'm good now. Sorry about that, Craig. Thank you for letting me know that I went mute there, though. It's actually the wire that I have here. I don't want to touch it because anytime I seem to bump this mic, it ends up unplugging. But yeah, when we get back down to Florida, when we're back down in South Florida, it's not going to be an issue anymore, right? We'll have a normal setup, we'll have a normal mic, that sort of thing. But until then, guys, best of luck with all of your lineups for tomorrow. Any slips that you decide to go with, we're going to be on site for Saturday as well, so we'll have a little bit of a report from there. But no showdown stream. I'll be driving home after the stream tomorrow, right around a 6-hour drive back down to South Florida, so won't have time to do that. We'll have showdown projections out and a prize picks board. So if you're on the Patreon, you'll have access to that. Just no content, right? I'm gonna have to get that projection sheet out when I can, but stream wise, it would have to be at like 4 a.m. right after I get home, after I get everything done. Just not so realistic. So not gonna have the content for y'all, but still projections if you're on that end. Like I said, best of luck, and I'll catch you guys next time.